Alright, hi everyone and welcome to A Dark Secret. Let's go ahead and get in game. Why would it matter? Oh, audio. Okay. Why would it matter, she thought. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Okay. She started towards the horizon. Words reached her ears from the distance. Why would I care? She felt tears welling in her eyes. I don't care. A shadow covered the sunlight and all of a sudden she felt only coldness. The others pulled her with them into the carriage. Nothing is worth caring about. She saw the horizon change its shape. From time to time, a tree or house covered the sight, but never for long. Why did this happen? The carriage stopped and she had to get out. The air was warm. She felt a slight breeze softly on her skin. It didn't happen, she lied to herself. It never happens. She continued her way home. When she looked at the door and turned the key to unlock it, she sighed. It never should happen. Interesting. The first thing she noticed when she woke up was the smell of tea, just like every morning. Or maybe not like every morning? Her eyes slowly opened. For a moment she had to think hard before she remembered why this day was special. It was her first day at school. School. Something she had anticipated for years. Not everyone could go to school, especially not in this town with limited numbers of students on every school. That she got a spot in her eyes was a miracle. The thought of going to school for the first time woke her up completely, and she jumped on her feet. A moment later, she sat at the kitchen table together with her parents having breakfast. Her family was small. She had no brothers or sisters, only her parents. None of her other relatives were still alive, and the little girl felt like her and her family were very close. In general, she felt like she had a nice family. She loved her parents and the life that she had. And of course, that she had already found a spot at school. Shiria, when I'm older, I'm going to become a teacher or a princess. Father, with a huge castle? Yes, and horses. A lot of horses. And cows. And sheeps. Sheep, sweetheart. Huh? It's sheep, not sheeps. You will never become a teacher or a princess if you don't work on your grammar. As usual, her parents began to teach her grammar and the spelling of words. It seemed as if they were eager to get her daughter one of the positions she so desired in the future. How wrong that impression would prove just a couple days later. The good thing about good times is that they are happy. The bad thing about good times is that they can only get worse. A few days later, Shiria had just come home from school. How was your day at school? I was the only one who knew all of the letters of the alphabet already, so the teacher gave me an extra good feedback for today. Great, Shiria. All the practice is really paying off. Don't rest on it, though. If you get lazy because you did one thing right, you are not going to get anywhere. Of course, I want to be a princess or a teacher with many horses. You will get there, sweetheart. Not if you don't keep it up. What a bitch. A few hours later. Shiria, come here. Being an obedient child, Shiria immediately walked out of her room towards her parents. Both of them are sitting around on the table with one of her teachers from school. Her father looks very serious, while her mother and the teacher were smiling. Your teacher has come to give you special classes since you are so far ahead of the other students. Shiria was completely stunned. Being allowed to go to school was awesome enough for her, but receiving private lessons seemed too good to believe. After she hadn't responded for a short while, her mother broke the silence. Well then, why don't you show him your room? Can't we study here? There's a table. Stop being so unthankful and show him your room. Even though Shiria was, after all those years used to her mother's harsh tone, it still frightened her a little bit. Without another word, she nodded towards her teacher, made a gesture towards her room, and turned around and walked into her room. She felt like something was not right. It was an undefined yet uneasy feeling around her stomach. Her mother was always like that, so she didn't understand why it would cause a different reaction for her that time. Before she could give it any more thought, her teacher stepped into the room, now standing behind her looking around the room. Shiria quickly turned around to not seem impolite. She saw how her teacher closed the door behind him and turned towards her. This is about to get weird, guys. Teacher, your family is not as wealthy as I had thought, is it? Not knowing what to respond to that, Shiria shrugged and looked towards the ground. Well, it doesn't matter. After another critical look around her room in which he could find nothing but a bed and a lot of undefined objects on the ground, he sat on the ground and gestured towards Shiria to sit with him. Opening one of the books, he turned towards her and began to explain what the book was about, and that he wanted to practice the alphabet in more advanced ways with her today. Shiria did her best to focus on the text in front of her and read with as few mistakes as possible. Most of the time she managed and soon completed the first chapter without any major difficulties. However, the uncomfortable feeling did not want to go away. After another chapter was over, her teacher nodded and closed the book. "Well done, Shiria. You really are far ahead of the others. I will come to regularly give you lessons like this." Shiria nodded. She had enjoyed the lesson, even though she still felt strangely uneasy. "Now, we only have one small problem. I am going to give you all of these lessons. That takes time. Time I could be spending somewhere else making money. We need to find something to do. We need to find something to make this worthwhile." The uneasy feeling Shiria had all this time increased. She didn't say a thing, looked at the ground. In all honesty, she didn't have a clue what he could possibly want from her. While she was still thinking about possible ways to pay him or polite ways to tell him that private lessons would not be necessary if they bothered him, her teacher put the books aside and grabbed her arm. Surprised, she looked up to him. He smiled. When he got up, she was forced to get on her feet along with him. Pulling her with him, he took a few steps and approached the bed. Okay. Shiria had no idea what he wanted, but a deep fear began to spread within her. Then the man, still holding her arm in a firm grip, tore her clothes off her body and threw them into a corner of the room. Violently, he threw her on the bed, where he crawled into the corner in his poor attempt to get away. It wasn't enough. He quickly took off his own clothes and was already on the bed with her. Okay. Without understanding what had really happened, Shiria still felt like it had been wrong, and spent the rest of the day in her room, without moving, without even closing her eyes apart from the occasional blinking. The next morning, she intended to bring up the awkward topic towards her parents, but their cheery faces and the happy atmosphere was so strange to her that she barely said or ate anything. Throughout the next months, more of her teachers started to visit her for private lessons, soon beginning to come together. Ooh. A year later, she found herself completely changed. All the joy of a child in her age had faded, and her dreams of what she wanted to become had changed. "How's it going at school, sweetheart? Are you getting along with your plans of becoming a princess?" "I don't want to be a princess no more." "Oh, what do you want to be then?" "A traveler. Or a soldier." "You don't say. These jobs are nothing for a sweet little girl like you." Shiria's response was nothing but a cold glare towards her father, which included much more hatred than should be possible for such a young girl to feel. She got up from the table and attempted to leave the house, but turned around one more time before leaving. "I want to be a traveler, or a soldier, or anything else that brings me far away from this place." Overwhelmed by pain and anger, she almost sprinted out of the house, out of the town, into the nearby forest. This was the only place that could give her comfort, as she had discovered a couple months back. After attempting to talk to her parents about what was going on, they had only responded with anger towards her, revealing it, and disgust. Since then, she had completely given up on her family and lost most any love she had ever felt towards her parents. Within 1 year, this young girl had become a serious person, full of pain, anger, and hatred. She controlled herself. With every week, every day, every hour, she succeeded better at it. Years went by without changing anything. Shiria grew up to be the person she had become. Can I go back? I think she had become through all those years of abuse, a serious, lonely, depressed, and broken woman without hopes, dreams, or feelings. She accepted her daily fate and lived through it the best she could. Wow. Every day was the same as the last and equal to what the next day would bring. Over the course of time, Shiria had changed. The control, the pain, the anger, and the disgust, all that had taught her to be strong, and she was. There was absolutely nothing that could happen that would actually shake her in that confidence. At least so she thought. One morning, something happened that did change her. The first thing she noticed is that her period didn't come. She didn't think much of it. The second thing that she noticed is that it repeatedly didn't come. She got kind of suspicious. The third thing she noticed was the beginning of a regular morning sickness. Then she knew. She was pregnant. Her first reaction was despair. She didn't want a child, especially not of those bastards. She didn't want to carry and raise a child that would become like them. Why would all this happen to her? Wasn't everything already enough? What had she done to make life punish her so hard? All she wanted was to die. Nothing more and nothing less went on in her mind. After a while, though, she had calmed down at least a bit. She looked down on her body and imagined a tiny person inside of her. And she felt it. It was a warm feeling, kind of like drinking hot chocolate after a day out in the cold, starting around her stomach, spreading across her entire body. Not long and she could feel it in her very being. At first she was extremely confused. She didn't remember any feeling like this, wondered what had happened to her. Days after, she realized what was going on. She felt love. For the first time in 10 years, she was able to love someone. It took her a long time to understand what exactly that meant, but when she finally understood, she looked down on her stomach where she believed the baby to be and smiled. It was a warm smile, full of the tenderness of a mother's care. After a very short time of consideration, she decided to remain silent about the matter towards other people, including her parents. She came to the conclusion that it would be better to deal with the situation herself as long as possible. At first, she hoped for it actually work out. Her stomach didn't grow a lot, her morning sickness soon getting better, and her bond with the baby kept getting stronger. She was wondering if the child would actually be able to feel that as well, or whether it was rather something non-existent for the baby and only important for her. On one hand, she wished to receive such an answer, but on the other hand, it was a nice thing for her to think about during long, sleepless nights when she was out in the woods. The forest and nature helped her just as much as the love to her unburdened child. Both things kept her alive, more importantly, kept her sane. Months passed during which she didn't ever lose her hope, or even feel bad about anything that went on. Ever since she had gotten pregnant, that pregnancy seemed to protect her from every kind of evil or hopeless thought. For a long time, everything went well. She barely gained any weight and seemed to have no pregnancy issues at all. In the 8th month of her pregnancy, though, she slowly started to develop the unusual symptoms of pregnancy. Her stomach began to grow. She had a way better appetite than usual, and in general, she seemed to gain some weight. After things continued for a while like that, her parents began to notice that something was not right. Well, that's a long time. Shiria, we need to have a talk. Shiria was shocked. She hadn't spoken to her parents in weeks, and for years their only conversations had consisted of a few words or sentences on each side. Her father got straight to the point. Something is weird. We don't want to give you that much to eat and make you this thick. Wow. Shiria, as usual, responded with silence. What a dick. Have you lost your voice? No. Then what's going on? Again, Shiria said nothing. She didn't know what she could say to make everything sound harmless, or hide the fact that she was expecting a child. Okay, if you don't want to say anything, we are going to do this the other way. You know what I think is going on? No. I think you have gotten yourself pregnant. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. So is this true? She wouldn't say yes. Not to them. No, I did not get myself pregnant. If anything, you did. Both of you constantly using me to make some additional money. You think I enjoyed that? Don't you think I was a little bit too young for all you had them do to me? Don't you think a tiny bit of protection, comfort, and love would have helped? But no, you had to accept their offers. You had to look away. You had to betray your own daughter. And for what? Money? Reputation? Money? You betrayed the only person you ever loved for who you are and who ever looked up to you. No one else ever will. But fine, that was your fault. It was your mistake. And this right now, the fact that I am getting a child, is your doing. I have never ever hated anyone as much as I despise you. Both of you. You don't even deserve my attention. You don't have the right to talk to me. Never again. With those words, Shiria turned around and rushed into her room, slamming the door behind her. Oh, we're only 14 minutes in. Can I do this? Can I... Yeah, I can do this. 2 days later. For the last 2 days since her parents had found out about her pregnancy, they hadn't spoken a word. All their encounters consisted of angry or hateful glares and uncomfortable silence. None of them lasted longer than a minute. It seemed like finding out about the pregnancy had torn the family apart completely and given them the last push into hating each other. After school, Shiria now went to her beloved forest instead of going home, not giving her family or the teachers opportunity to do anything to her during the day anymore. At night, she had to go home. She wasn't afraid of the forest and the creatures that had lured in its shadows in the darkness of the night. But staying out in the dark was disallowed in her village, and heavy penalties awaited those who dared to disobey. When she got home that evening, none of her parents even looked up. Neither did she look towards them. It seemed as if her parents had stopped thinking about her existence. However, that impression was not completely true. The first stroke came out of nowhere. She flinched and silently turned away. It seemed to make him even more angry. A kick in the back followed his previous hit. There was little reaction from her. She wrapped her arms around her stomach to protect her unborn child. Another kick in the back, somewhere in the back of her head. She heard the words, "Turn around," shouted at her, but she was too shocked to respond to the request. When a single tear ran down her cheek, she closed her eyes. He would not have the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She pulled her thoughts into her mind, withdrew herself from emotion, and did her best to keep it that way. It was the only relief she ever found in situations like this. This time, it was not only a relief but also a mistake. With her not paying attention, he had walked around her. The attack hit her stomach. In an explosion of pain, she gasped for air. From the distance of her mind, she heard laughter. She barely felt the second kick or the third or the ones after. Tears slowly ran down her distorted face. When the pain began to change, she lost consciousness. Her relief only lasted a few minutes. Soon after she woke up, the pain was still there, but it had changed from what she remembered it to be. It was a completely different kind of pain than anything she had ever felt before. For a moment, she was confused, frightened. Then she realized what the attacks on her stomach had caused. The pain was not from the beating itself. She was giving birth. Hours later, it was finally over, and she held a baby in her arms, tiny but alive. She looked at it, held it light, tighter, smiled at it. It was a little baby girl. Kyla. She didn't know why, but she knew it sounded somehow right. She loved her child just as much, if not even more, than she always had. Holding her little daughter in her arms, she finally felt like she had someone to hold on to, someone to be there for, someone who would love her as much as she loved the child. In a way, she didn't want to tell her parents about that the child was there. She was certain that they hadn't found out about it yet. Then again, it felt even more uncomfortable to think about the consequences when they found out. After all, her stomach was not large anymore. Alright guys, I think we're going to end it here. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the video, or me, I'm way too invested for this to be a single part. I'm finishing this as soon as I can. Probably as soon as I get home from work, or maybe even way early in the morning if I decide to wake up early. I hope you guys liked the video. Hope you guys are having a great night. I will see you later.